welcome to the stage a tremendous actress, a really lovely woman who has been in a ton of movies. I'm not going to go through her credits right now because we're going to talk about that when she gets up here. She's an incredibly lovely woman, and I had the pleasure of interviewing her last week on my podcast, and it was actually one of the highest listened podcasts that I've ever had, and I've been doing my podcast for over 2 years, and she just knocked it out of the park. So I'd like to thank her for that, for my ratings going up because of that. But she's amazing, and you guys are going to have a great time talking to her about all the great, amazing things that she's done. And let's say hello to the wonderful Adrienne Barbeau, everybody.
Well, thanks.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to be here.
We were talking a little bit. How often do you get to come out and do the conventions?
I do about four or five a year.
4 or 5 a year.
Yeah. I don't. Is it on? Hello.
There you go.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 a year.
Yeah.
Do you like them?
Bills to pay.
Come on, you got mod money.
$1.68, 58.
When those checks come in, if you guys are actors out there, you know what I'm talking about. You get those residual checks. It's not even worth cashing. It costs more to cash them.
Sometimes.
But you like me. You're so great with the fans, Adrienne. I mean, you're so great with it, right? Isn't it? I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and you're one of the nicest celebrities that interacts with the fans I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you. I several years ago I did a convention with, who played,
There's everybody in here knows what you're talking about, I guarantee.
3 names, La Bamba.
Lou Diamond Phillips.
Lou Diamond Phillips. And I think it was Lou's first time, and we were all sitting in the green room, and he said, it's so gratifying to talk to people. And I had never thought of that word before, but there's such a, and it's happened more and more as the years have gone by, because a lot of the people who are watching Maude or watching Catwoman or anything are now of an age where they're coming to the conventions, and as actors, we don't, we show up and we do our job and we go away, and never, ever, were it not for hearing people talk, realize how sometimes we have a positive impact on people. And I had a fellow come up to me, this wasn't at a con, my kids were playing soccer and he was at the soccer game, and he came up and he said, "You saved my life." He said, "Did you play Mrs. and I can't remember the character's name on the Wayans Brothers?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You saved my life." And it turned out that this fellow had been in an auto accident. They thought he wasn't going to make it. He was in the hospital, but he was just on the edge. And he was a huge fan of the Wayans Brothers. And he just said to himself, you have to stay here long enough for 2:00 to come along and the Wayans Brothers to come along. And that was the episode that I was on. And he made it through and he started to recover. Now, that was his impression of it, but so that's one of the reasons I love to be here.
Yes, it's amazing how that kind of thing, like films or television or media or pop culture affects people so much.
Yeah, and we don't recognize it as doing it, it's a job and we're trying to do our best we can. Yeah. But then when you hear stories about, I've had many people come up and say, and especially young women in the 70s who were watching Maude say, that character taught me how to be an independent woman at a time when it was just beginning. Yeah. So it's not me, it's the character.
Yeah. That's cute.
Anyway, I took us far afield.
No, you didn't.
What do you want to ask?
I don't know at this point. No. You mentioned more, but I want to go back. Because you told a fantastic story on my podcast that I just want to mention. No, I'll remind
Which
you.
one?
Which one? You have so many that are awesome, and I mean that. No, but you were talking about how you ended up when you had Maud. You'd never worked in television. You were only a stage actress at that point, and you are the original Rizzo in Grease on Broadway. And we talked a little bit about that, and I wanted you to talk about Grease and how a lot of people think immediately when you think of Grease, you think John Travolta, you think Olivia Newton-John, big hit, smash hit. But when that show opened, there's a Chicago connection to that show too.
Yes,
A big
it
Chicago
started here at what was it? Oh, I should have read my book. What was the name of it?
I should have read
It was some underground.
Yeah, a small theater company here in Chicago. Yeah, I got you. It's all right. All right, because there's so many of
It was a
them.
train station, wasn't it? Does anybody know? Is anybody here from Chicago?
We're all from Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
No, yeah, I understand. I got you. I understand. So, now I Remains? Was it Remains? No, it wasn't Remains.
No.
Okay.
Anyway.
We're done. Anyway, but it started here in Chicago. I brought the damn thing
Yes,
up. It's
yes.
my fault. All right. So, so it started in Chicago, but then it becomes this. It goes to Broadway. And you were in the original Broadway one. But a lot of people immediately think, oh, smash hit. And they made a movie out of it. Millions. Everybody knows it's iconic. All the songs. But it didn't start out that way.
No.
So can you talk a little bit about Grease and how it started? And
We got bad reviews. We got the television, the newspaper reviews, and in those days, if the New York Times gave you a bad review, it was pretty much, that was the end of it. You were going to close the next day. And Clive Barnes from the New York Times did not get it at all. He didn't understand why it was called Grease. He thought it had something to do with I don't know. It was just, but and I remember, I think it was Walter Bobby. I don't think it was Barry Bostwick, but one of the actors being backstage almost in tears saying, I cannot have another flop. I cannot have another show that closes, But there was a news reporter whose name was Richard Watt, I believe, who wrote for the Daily News. He gave us a good review. There was another news reporter whose name was something Watts, Douglas Watts, who wrote for the Post, the New York Post. He gave us a scathing review. The producers waited until 5 o'clock the day after the show opened, and they took an ad in the New York Post, and they ran the review from the Daily News with the same, the guy's name was almost the same. There was one S missing. So that it looked like the New York Post gave us a great review. and so they kept us going.
that's amazing.
And they also saw, it was all for the producers because they thought word of mouth was building already from the previews.
Yeah.
And so they went out and raised more money. They gave all of the actors the opportunity to buy a share in the show
And
for $1,000, and Barry Bostwick and I were going to split $1,000, but I only had $500 in my bank account, and that was my emergency medical, medical, and I thought, no, I can't do this, I need this money. So neither one of us invested, and that's why I do the convention. But they kept it going, and then
great.
Suddenly it was, it's a big hit.
Yeah, it was a huge hit. Did you? By the way, you're an amazing singer.
Thank you.
Say that you're a fantastic singer. Is that when you started out? Did you always want to? Did you want to do musical theater? Was that the thing that you were looking?
It was the thing that happened to me, I guess, or for me. I was, my mother, somebody told my mother when I was in 5th grade that I could sing, and so she started me taking voice lessons and made me take ballet, which I quit as soon as I was.
Where are you from?
California.
From California.
All over California, but
Okay.
we settled in San Jose. And when I was about 15, I was working in a beauty salon, cleaning up hair and making appointments and everything. And one of the board of directors members from the San Jose Light Opera, which was it was a community theater, but it was a multi-million-dollar organization, was one of the clients, and we just started talking. I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, we're doing The King and I." And my boss said, "Oh, Adrienne sings. You ought to go and audition for that." And so I did, and they hired me to play Tup Tim, and suddenly I was working on stage in a musical comedy. And
Yeah.
that I continued to work for the San Jose Light Opera, and then a week after I graduated high school, we had applied to the U.S. State Department, and we had a musical comedy review under the auspices of the San Jose Light Opera, and they chose us to go to what in those days was called the Orient. It's now Southeast Asia.
Right.
And we entertained the armed forces for 3 months. So I was 18 years old, my first paying job, $7 a day, and we were right on the DMZ when they were firing at us. So
Oh my
on
God.
the anniversary of the ceasefire, the 10-year, and it was an incredible experience. So that sort of started me in musical comedy.
And anything else besides Grease on Broadway?
My first Broadway show was Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh, wow.
I was Seidel. No, I was not Seidel. Bette Midler was Seidel.
Midler was Seidel.
I was Huddle. Yeah. And John Savage was in it at one point. John and I worked years later in Carnival.
Right.
And who else was in it that went on to television?
Well, I mean, that's not bad right there. Bette
Yeah.
Midler and John Savage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That was, what was it like to be in New York during that time period? Like, doing theater in New York in the 70s like that?
It was
Early
great.
Yeah.
It was great. It was the late 60s, early
Early,
70s. Grease was 72.
Yeah.
I lived in the Village before all the cheap shoe stores and,
Coffee shops.
coffee, all of that.
Yeah.
Used to ride my bike up to the theater on Broadway, and it was a good time.
Do you miss doing being on the boards at all? Yeah.
I really don't. I was here in Chicago in 2016. I did Pippin at the Orpheum Theater.
Yeah,
Is
the
that
Orpheum.
the one
Yeah.
downtown?
Now we remember
Yeah.
that one because that was
Yes.
only a few years ago.
Yes. But the only reason I took that job, it was a national tour. We got to go to, we went to Amsterdam. We went all over the country, and I saw cities I'd never been in before that I fell in love with. But the only reason I really took it is because the character got to sing her song hanging upside down 15 feet in the air from a trapeze, and in your early 70s, that's not something you get offered very often. So, but for me to do theater, I'd much rather get up at 4:30 in the morning and go sit on a set all day. My energy is morning energy, and doing theater
It's night energy.
it's night energy,
It's 8 days a week.
I'd rather be
It's
sitting home
eight
watching
performances
TV.
a week,
Yeah,
It's tough.
but it depends on the role. It always depends on the role.
That's great. Well, I'd love to see you back on stage hanging upside down from a trapeze. That'd be fantastic.
I don't know if I could hold on anymore, but we'll see. We'll see.
So let's talk about Maude. I mean,
Thank you.
so you got the part. You were doing Grease, right?
I was doing Grease. I had been nominated for a Tony,
Yeah.
and Norman Lear's casting director either came to see the show or she read about it or something, and so they called me in to meet Norman. But the pilot for the series had already been done as part of All in the Family, where Maude's daughter, Carol, was getting married. Maude was originally Gene Stapleton's cousin,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Archie and
Edith.
Edith. Oh man. And they had already established the character, played by a really wonderful comedian, but they weren't going to use her in the ongoing series, whether it was because she couldn't move to LA or so they called me in. But the character had already been established as having a 7-year-old boy, and at that time Norman didn't think I looked old enough to have a 7-year-old boy. I mean, we were all in our mid-20s and we were playing teenagers on Broadway,
Yeah.
but a little different on TV.
Yeah.
So, we said hello and we had our interview and I went away. And about a month later, they called me and asked me to fly to LA and audition again, and then they hired me.
It's interesting. You were telling me when I talked to you last is that you remember you were sitting at the table at a table read and you were like,
Yes.
what the because obviously for people who are too young, Norman Lear changed television. He literally
He
changed
did.
the scope of television. Nobody was doing political or cultural stuff the way that Norman
Nothing.
did, about race, about sex, about everything, politics.
Everything.
It was amazing. He literally changed television. Nobody was doing sitcoms and family shows were all like Father Knows Best and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Then along comes All in the Family and everything changed and he changed it. And Maude was revolutionary at the time. So you get this part and it's the first time you've ever worked in TV. It's the first
That's
time you were
right.
first time you were ever in front of a camera.
Mhm.
If I'm not correct. And tell me about that first table read when you were sitting there and you talked about how Norman Lear.
Norman.
Yeah, talking about Norman. Yeah.
I don't know if it was the first table read, but at some point early on at the table read where all the cast gets together and reads the script for the following week, all of a sudden I realized that I knew a genius. I had never met a genius before. And Norman truly was a genius. He had a facility for knowing exactly what was wrong with the script, how to fix it, how to get the laugh. He was brilliant. He really was brilliant. And I just attended his memorial service and learned a lot more about him. And there is I don't know if it's called Masters of there was a documentary that was made about Norman.
Yeah, American Masters.
American Masters,
yeah.
about 5 or 7 years
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
And it wasn't so much that he affected all of us with his television work, but then he went on to found People for the United Way and all of that. And at the memorial service, I think it was Judd Apatow who got up to speak. And in the middle of what he was saying, he said, and he was rich. He was really rich. Nobody here has talked about how rich he was. But did he take his money and build a spaceship to go, No. Did he take his money and build an ugly-looking SUV? No. He took his money and bought the Declaration of Independence. And then he outfitted a mobile truck museum, and he took the Declaration of Independence to all 50 states so that we, high school students, grammar students, college students, everyone could see the actual document.
Yeah.
That's what Norman did.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to be in his company.
And it must have been amazing to be a part of that show at that time. And I want to bring up the Maude abortion episode,
Mhm.
which just was incredible. And I know that people still react. That was 50-something years ago,
Well.
and people still. Obviously it's.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that, but what's going on now? But it's incredible when you watch that now. It holds up. What was it like? When there were landmark episodes like that on Maude, what was it like for the actors for the?
We shot the first episode. We started filming in July of 72, and we didn't go on the air until September. We shot the first episode in that period between July and September, and they told us that if we didn't have sky-high ratings, we were not going to be shooting the second episode, and it was never going to be seen. But the show was a huge success, and so both episodes ended up airing. In maybe 100, I don't remember the numbers now, but there were at least 100 networks across the country, or studios across the country. Yeah, networks that did not show it. It was very controversial.
Yeah.
B got a lot of, I didn't realize it at the time, a lot of hate mail,
Yeah.
really vicious, nasty hate mail.
Yeah.
And But we were very proud of it.
Yeah.
I mean, because the facility that Norman had with all of our scripts was to present a controversial subject, or a subject that people had differing views on. But he presented it in such a witty manner that it just made you laugh. Maybe it made you think. He wasn't hitting you over the head with one philosophy or another. Obviously he was liberal, but he wasn't saying, you gotta do this or you gotta believe that.
Yeah.
Just, hopefully made you think, but mostly made you entertained and made you come back and watch more.
It's got to be. I mean, it's amazing that your first television show was that one.
Yes.
That's unbelievable. Okay, but that television show led you to other things. But there was this TV movie that he did with this guy.
Oh.
It was called Someone's Watching.
Someone's Watching.
And Lauren Hutton was in it. Some dude directed it. I don't know this guy.
And
I don't know who he is.
I think it was. I think it was Maude that led to that TV show,
Yeah.
because I learned later John Carpenter, of whom we're speaking,
I think they know.
was a big Howard Hawks fan, and he always talked about the Howard Hawksian woman, as portrayed by Lauren Bacall and Kate Hepburn. And I believe that John, in watching Maude, saw me as Carol and thought, this woman could play, sort of the same kind of thing. She can play comedy, but she's strong, and blah, 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 blah. So he called me in for an interview. And first time I'd ever met him, my agents called and said, "Oh, this director wants to meet you. He's got a blah, blah, blah. He's done a couple of movies, and he's just getting started, but, go in and meet him."
Yeah.
So I went in, and I could barely see him through the cigarette smoke.
By the way, let me just say this. We've done a couple of panels this weekend that involve John. And so everybody mentions his smoking.
He has stopped.
Yes, he has.
He has stopped. But I could barely see him, but I thought, oh, he's rather nice looking. And this show, the film that we were doing, Someone's Watching Me, my character was gay. And she had a scene in which she divulges that she's gay. And it was very well written. It was very subtle and And John said to me, well, if we would start talking about the scene. He said, if I'm going to tell my friends about myself, blah, 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 I thought this was the way I was going to do it. And I thought, oh, shoot, he's gay. Chalk that up, But we started working together, and
he wasn't gay. He wasn't gay. That's awesome.
So that led to Someone's Watching.
That's
That was
awesome. Oh, I thought John was gay. That's the best thing I've ever heard. Okay, so
I'm going to tell one more John Carpenter.
Oh, please,
Is
please.
this going to end up on YouTube? Or
Oh, it's
something?
already. You're screwed.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're done. He's going to be calling you your phone's going to ring in a minute.
After we did The Fog, we bought a home in Inverness, in the area where the lighthouse is. And we moved in on Labor Day weekend. And John was a huge Jerry Lewis telethon fanatic,
I can't. Yeah.
So it's Labor Day weekend, and it's the Jerry Lewis telethon, and John's staying up all night, And I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. And about, God, forgive me, John, if you're watching. About, 4 in the morning, John comes in the room with a towel over his head, and he says, Adrienne, there's a bat in the living room. And I said, well, let it out. I'm not doing that. So I got up and opened the door and let the bat out. And he finished watching the television.
I am so glad you told that story. Jesus. That's unbelievable. Okay, before we move on, like John, I was obsessed with the Jerry Lewis television.
Oh, were you really?
I'm a massive Jerry Lewis fan, and I am not kidding you, Adrienne. I watched it 24 hours straight. I had no idea that I had that account.
He did too.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I did never have a bat in my house.
Did you donate?
Of course I did.
Okay.
Of course I did. Yeah, but I love Jerry Lewis. But anyway, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
So that's a
Scared by a
John
bat. The
story.
guy who directed Halloween was scared by a bat. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so you mentioned The Fog. The Fog was the first theatrical film that you
Yes,
worked with John
yeah.
on. And then it was followed by Escape from New York.
Mhm.
And you. Well, by the way, I love the fact. Can I just mention this? That Joe Polis had to drop out
Yes.
from being a part of the John Carpenter's The Thing reunion. He wasn't able to make it, and so for the photo ops, Adrienne was very kind enough. I'm sure you got. How many people got photo ops for the
For the
group?
Thing?
For the Thing. And were you thinking like, what the hell is Adrienne Barbeau doing here? And you probably understand what. Can you explain what? Well, first of all, it was so nice of you to step in
Well,
and do that.
thank you for inviting me.
No, and do the photo op, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so cool. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, bonus, because they might not know what your connection. Besides the fact that you were married to the guy at the time he made it. Tell everybody your part in the thing, and.
Checkmate. Checkmate. I was the computer wizard.
Yeah, computer wizard. But it was so cool. Like Polish drops out, and you're like, yeah, I'll do the photo op. And then I was disappointed yesterday when we did the panel. You weren't up here.
Oh,
For the panel.
what was I going to say?
I was
don't
gonna
even
make
remember.
I was gonna make a chess move and see what happened. So, but anyway,
I truly don't even remember recording this. You know?
do you remember what McCready does to you in that?
No, but I've been told.
He pours
J&B.
J&B. Yeah, he
And the
pours
only
J&B.
reason I know is J&B is somebody came to the photo shoot with a bottle of
I'll tell you, there were many times I've seen the thing, and I've gone to midnight shows and stuff like that. And we were at I saw it at the Music Box. There's a theater here in Chicago, and there was a bar next door, and we had J&B before, just before. That's part of it. That's part of it. But like, what was it like to work with John?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, I knew him as a director before I knew him,
Yeah.
As a friend. He's wonderful. I mean, and in fact, John gave me a piece of acting advice that nobody had ever given me before that I carried with me until I met George, and then George undid it completely. But we did the scene, telling Lauren that I'm gay.
Yeah.
And John came, and up until that point, I had only done musical comedy on stage and television. And John came up and he said, "That was great. That was just great. It was perfect. Do a little less." And I said, "Less?" And he said, "Yeah, just do a little less." And all of a sudden, it was like the light bulb went off, and it was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is film acting, and just bring it down a little bit. You're on stage, you're as big as can be, So from then on, I did a little less until George Romero said, "No, you can go bigger. You can go bigger." Are you sure? Yeah, go bigger.
Oh, you are as big as it comes in Creepshow. That's the least subtle performance I've ever seen.
But I've learned as long as it's honest,
totally
as long
appropriate.
as it's coming from the right place.
Well, I want to make sure we talk about some of the other amazing people that you worked with in the. Well, first of all, let me ask you this: are you a horror fan? Were you a horror
I am
fan?
not.
Okay.
No,
You married John Carpenter, and you're not a horror fan.
The night that I announced our engagement on the Johnny Carson show, I raced from the filming of that to the first screening that John was holding of Halloween. I'd never seen Psycho. I'd never seen any of those things.
Oh my God.
I think when I was little, I may have seen something called Donovan's Brain, but
Right.
But I didn't grow up going to the movies in the first place. I certainly never went to horror films.
Right.
So they're screening Halloween, and John is sitting next to me, and I'm like, and by the time it was over, he was bruised. And Tommy Atkins was with us because Tommy was a close friend of mine, Tommy and Garn Stevens from Halloween 3. And Tommy leaned over and he said to Garn and to our other friend was there, "I'm not sure she should be dating this guy." And I've never seen Halloween since. And I only watched Halloween 3 because Garn, we just lost Garn a year ago, and I was putting together a video clip for her memorial service. So I sped through until I got to the
You still don't watch horror?
No.
No.
The only time I watch it now, I do video captioning for the blind. I'm describing what's going on screen in between the dialogue for television shows and PBS shows, Nova and all of that, and I get a lot of the Blumhouse.
Yeah.
They ask me to do Blumhouse, so I have to watch.
Oh no!
3 Nights at Freddy's or whatever, 5 Nights at Freddy's, or
So do you have to?
the Red Room, or no, something about a telephone, the
black phone.
The black phone.
Ethan Hawke, yeah.
You know, but I'm reading my dialogue, so I'm not really
No, you're not.
seeing what's on the screen.
But are you like?
He is now being eviscerated.
Do you have to do stuff like that?
It's what's the character from SEAL Team? Jason.
Yeah.
Jason looks at him with a furrowed brow. You know, there's a lot of furrowed brows. But yeah, I'm describing what's going on.
Brows.
You know, the perp picks up the gun, or she falls on the floor and blood's coming out of her head. Whatever you can't see,
I love
and you can't, but you can only hear.
I think it's fantastic that you do that. I think it's amazing
I love
that you
it.
do that.
I
I love that. We were talking about this before, but I love the fact that like the people who do take advantage of that. Do you get to say, and I'm Adrienne Barbeau? Do you get
No,
to
no.
Oh, because you know
No.
how people would freak out if they knew it was you?
No, some of the it depends on the studio.
Yeah.
We always say, I don't know, captioning, or I can't remember what the first line is, provided by WGBH, Media Access Group at WGBH.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will have read by.
Oh, I see.
And then, there are a group of us who do it.
Okay, it's really cool that you do that.
I love
That's
it.
amazing.
I love it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned Romero, you've worked with Carpenter, you worked with Romero, you worked with Craven, and you don't like horror.
And I don't like horror. But, it's wonderful to do as an actor, where do you get an opportunity to run the gamut of emotions, if they're well written?
I know Craven was a troublesome movie to make with Craven.
Not because of Wes.
No, I know.
Not
He was getting pressure from the studios and all that crap.
Yes, the studios just kept pulling the money out from under him. We showed up on set one day. We didn't have a makeup trailer because they hadn't paid the rent. It was, and he had to eliminate entire scenes and characters, and we didn't have the props we needed, and so he had his hands full. It was real, and it was a hard shoot. Not incredibly hard, but because we were in South Carolina in the muggy swamps with chiggers and ticks and gators and all of that.
So it wasn't the best circumstances to work with Craven on that.
I didn't get a chance to spend as much time with him away from the, and really get to know him. He was a lovely man.
Romero.
But he was working 14 hours a day and then going to dailies, and I was working 14 hours a day and going home and trying to get to sleep.
Washing up the Tiggers.
Yeah.
But Romero on Creepshow.
I love George.
Yeah, please. One of the greatest humans that's ever lived. One of the greatest artists of all time. Talk a little bit about. People love you. You're amazing in Creepshow. It's one of my favorite performances that you've ever done. But George, we were lucky enough to have George at this convention. I think 3 or 4 times, and I got to know him. Actually, it's incredible. He was he's an amazing guy, and just and I think like a satirist on the level of Twain, and in that regard, he's incredible. So, and the stuff that you got to do in Creepshow is just so amazing. What was it like to just to work with George?
Well, when they first sent me the script, and I didn't know anything about George, I'd never seen
Well, of course, you didn't like horror.
I read the script and I thought, I can't do this. This is gross. And dialogue. No, I'm not going to do this. Plus, I don't drink. I'm never drunk, so I was like,
My God, that's the greatest performance I've ever seen.
But Tommy Atkins had already been cast, and Tommy's a close friend, so I called Tom and, Tommy, you're going to do this? Oh, 80, you don't get it at all. It's a cartoon, it's a comic book. He's going to be very stylized. And John, of course, is saying to me, you're going to turn down an opportunity to work with George Romero? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I show up and I remember saying to George the first day, you know, if I'm gonna start working for you, but if I'm not in the ballpark here, if I'm not doing what you want, you send me home because I'm not sure what I'm doing here. And I credit Billy with George, really. You know, he kept saying, no, you can do this, and I finally thought, well, you know what? He's the director.
Yeah.
I mean, if they.
So you trusted him?
I trusted him completely, and I thought, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
What are the movies that most people, because we're running short on time here, what are the movies that most people you get the most to sign and the quotes that they want? What's the feedback you get of favorite stuff? Especially at the horror convention.
This weekend, and mostly The Fog, and Creepshow, and Escape. You know, Swamp Thing comes in sometimes a little less. Most recently, in the last couple of years, even at the horror conventions, the Catwoman stuff, the Batman stuff has been. Yeah. But The Fog is always, people love The Fog.
It's a great movie. I loved it because it was such a different. It was such a great follow up to Halloween, because Halloween is relentless, and The Fog is like this beautiful ghost story, and stylistically different.
But what I always. The only film of John's that I've seen other than mine is Starman, and I really love Starman. I really love Starman.
Yeah, I mean Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I just want to mention congratulations on your ex-husband and your son.
Oh.
And their unbelievable music career. Yeah. I saw John and Cody and the band 4 times. I've seen them live 4 times, and it's incredible. If you've never seen John live, it's unbelievable. And Cody, your son.
It was great.
What's it like to just see your son up there just kicking ass on stage? I mean,
not so much because I've seen Cody kick ass by himself, but to see the two of them working together, and John looking to Cody, you know, because Cody was sort of leading the band in some ways. Yeah. And Cody looking it was just as a mom. Oh
really quickly before we get out of here, you told me a story, and I think you should share with everybody about you were told to come and see a rehearsal or to see a show. Oh, yeah. You were like, I don't know if I want to go.
Well, you know, I said to Cody, "Is your dad going to be singing? Are they doing any of the Coupe de Ville stuff?" No. I said, "Oh God, an hour and a half of electronic music. I'm going to blow my brains out." But I didn't know they were going to have the movie on screen. It's so exciting. Yeah. You can see they've got a lot of the performances because they travel the world. Yeah. And I think a lot of the performances are on YouTube or something. God, it was exciting. I was blown away.
It's something to see, you know, like those two up there. But I love that you were like, oh God, I don't want to see it.
I really wasn't. I think they're planning, hopefully, maybe in not this September, but maybe next September, they might be doing
a tour.
Another.
And if you haven't seen Carpenter and doing the music with the band and his son
with the screen behind it.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's a great concert. What's next for you?
What's next for me? I just finished a film for Tubi, which I just started airing. I had one friend who said, "I really liked your performance," and I thought, "Oh God, what does that mean about the show?" But I just finished that. I think I'm going to be adapting myself. I had done an adaptation of my second vampire novel, Love Bites, with Harrison Smith. Yeah. And after several years, we had to deal with the strike and everything else. It feels like I want to get back to the original novel and do another adaptation for maybe to try and get it as a series. Right. And we've got a couple of films that are making the festival circuit. But you know what? I'm going to mention one thing because they just released it. It's an old film. Okay. Mike Mendez. What's the one he did about the spider? Big freaking spider?
Yeah, Big freaking spider. Yeah,
Big freaking spider. That's
giant. Whatever.
Mike and I did this film back in the early 2000s, I think, called The Convent. And
Oh, yeah.
they've just released.
Oh, yeah,
you know
yeah,
the
yeah.
convent?
I do.
Well, they've just released it on 4K,
It's
Blu-ray or whatever that is, and it's really worth watching.
It is, it's good,
Very
yeah.
funny.
Oh, yeah.
It's a horror film, but it's very funny.
Yeah.
I have a film making the festival circuit that'll probably end up streaming called Oddities. It's a short film.
Okay.
And another one that's not a horror film at all, called Early Retirement.
Okay.
And
It sounds like a horror film.
No, it's actually a young gay man whose father is from Egypt, and whose father is having trouble dealing with his relationship with his boyfriend and all of that. But it's won a lot of awards, and so.
And the website is abarbeau.com.
Oh,
if
thank
you. If you want to check it out.
And
It's
I'm on
A-
Instagram. I don't. My Instagram posts go to Facebook, but I don't deal with
Right.
Facebook. But I'm on Instagram as.
Right. You can't be on X because you
Adrienne.
totally trashed the guy at the beginning of this interview. You can't be on X anymore.
Oh, I got off of that.
I know you did.
I got off of
I know
that.
you did. I know.
I try not to impose my political views. Sometimes I can't keep
Do
my
it.
mouth shut.
Do it. Do
But
it.
I'm very proud of myself for posting a picture of Catwoman walking with a skyline behind her, and all I said was, another cat lady on her way to the ballot box. That's all I said. I didn't say what she was supposed to vote for.
You're the best. Adrienne, you are unbelievable. You're the best. She's so great. Adrienne Barbeau.